What's good? What's good? Welcome back to the Line of Credit show. In this episode, I'm going to have a little talk about my opinion on the current state of the UK stock market and why it's becoming a political and a social issue. The London Stock Exchange was once a cornerstone of British capitalism, but now it finds itself at a critical juncture. The current de-equitisation of the market is shaking investor confidence and is raising concerns about the future of the UK's financial landscape. For most of my listeners, de-equitisation is a process of companies leaving the London Stock Exchange. And this is mainly due to delisting, takeovers, and mergers. In my opinion, this is becoming a political and a social issue. De-equitisation and a deeply undervalued market that is ripe for takeovers is a national crisis. Now, I know some people may hear this and think, oh, he's mad, and I believe that you will change your mind after hearing what I say. The main question we need to ask is, do we want to create an environment where our children no longer have the ability to own a stake in the system they consume from? De-equitisation alongside an unaffordable housing market will cause immense problems down the line, and it will pave the way for socialism. Let's look deeper into the factors fueling the crisis. Inflation has created a cost of living crisis, and that has pushed people towards yanking some money out of the market. This has been compounded by soaring mortgage rates. Both has undoubtedly placed pressure on investors. And in turbulent times, investors are tempted to seek higher returns. So growth stocks and high risk assets become irresistible. Hence why many British investors have shifted their focus across the pond to the US market, and they've been putting a lot of money into the crypto markets because the opportunities seem more promising. But takeovers, mergers, and the exodus of companies from the UK market to America, these are all exacerbating the crisis. So there are many factors contributing towards this crisis. Capital flight, takeovers, mergers, certain regulations. But each departure from the London market further erodes investor confidence in the London Stock Exchange, and it weakens its standing on the global stage. Companies are enticed by greater liquidity, access to capital, and a larger investor base. They find themselves increasingly drawn to Wall Street, or they're reluctant to list on the London Stock Exchange. Furthermore, the reluctance to list on the London Stock Exchange, it's also added fuel to the fire, whether due to regulatory burdens, limitations in access to capital, or concerns over market volatility. These companies opt for alternative avenues, or they don't bother listing at all. And this further diminishes the LSE's appeal, and it exacerbates a crisis. Let's look at Arm Holdings, a British company that recently chose to list on the New York Stock Exchange rather than the London Stock Exchange. This decision sent a wave of negativity through London, and it's raising concerns about the UK's ability to compete on the global stage. British investors have to invest into an American market so they can become a shareholder in a British company. Not really looking good, is it? In the past 9 years, 20% of the companies in the London Stock Exchange have left the exchange. 9 years ago, there's roughly 2,400 companies listed on the LSE. Now, there's just over 1,900. This trend is not London's friend, but it's not just a financial problem. There's a political and a social dimension to this crisis. The city's inability to engage and inspire the British public has left many feeling disconnected from the stock market. Most Britons below the age of 35 do not know what the FTSE and AIM markets are, but they know what cryptocurrency is. Where do we see any adverts or promo materials that's promoting the UK stock market and its merits and its advantages? There's not none. But every day across social media, millions of British people are inundated with cryptocurrency, growth stocks, and other forms of investments. Property investment is another one. British investors below 50 do not buy products they are unaware of. This also applies to single stocks and markets. And London, the Square Mole, needs to understand this. How can we get British investors to invest into the British market when most of them don't know what the British market is? While Wall Street continues to thrive, the LSE is struggling to capture the imagination of investors at home. It's not just the LSE, but it's the city as a whole. Also, Aquis. As we speak, there's a rise of socialism among younger generations. Faced with soaring house prices, limited economic opportunities, both millennials and Gen Z individuals are turning towards socialist ideologies for solutions. This trend is troubling for the future of capitalism and the free market system as a whole. To gain a better understanding of the public sentiments surrounding these issues, let's take a closer look at recent YouGov polls that reveal overwhelming support for nationalisation across key industries such as energy, transport, and water. 34% of British people tend to support bringing energy companies back into public ownership. 32% strongly support. So 2 in 3 British people support bringing energy companies back into public ownership. We see the same type of data for train operating companies. 32% tend to support train operating companies being brought back into public ownership. 34% strongly support. So 2 in 3 British people support bringing train operating companies back into public ownership. 58% of British people support that the water companies should come back into public ownership. This data underscores a growing appetite for state intervention in the economy and a signal in political priorities. The Libertarian Party has just announced that it will take all private water, energy and transportation companies. They will list them all on the stock market through. What it wants to do is dilute the current shareholders. They want to dilute the current shareholders and list a large chunk of these companies on the London Stock Exchange. So even conservatives and libertarians and capitalists aren't really too keen on energy companies, water companies and transportation companies being held by private investors. Here's a number that will scare you. 72% of Britons support introducing rent controls. That's data going back to 2022. At the end of the day, we must remember that politicians are subject to the public opinion. They are servants to the people. In response to these challenges, policymakers and industry leaders must take decisive actions to revitalise the UK market and restore investor confidence. This may involve implementing reforms to make the market more accessible to retail investors, incentivising companies to list domestically, and promoting financial literacy among millions of British people who don't have an understanding on finances and the capital markets. This will benefit the city as a whole. Do we want to create an environment where ownership is unavailable for the next generation of Brits? Housing is unaffordable for them. The stock market is being privatised. Multinationals and corporate monopolies are depriving young people of the ability to build a business that can capture a large market share in the UK. We're bailing out pension funds, banks. To us in the city, this is business as usual for us. But this will slowly create, well, it's not will, this is slowly creating an environment that is ripe for socialists to take over. We nearly see it with Jeremy Corbyn. The next time, we won't be so lucky. Do we want to create a financial sector where most of us under the age of 40 won't have work in London within the next 15 years? Because Wall Street and multinationals will privatise most of the stock market. Do we want to turn London into a clearinghouse for the world? I understand data is quite profitable at the moment, but not to the detriment of the British economy. These are all questions the city must ask, because if we thought Brexit was damaging, then what will come will be far, far worse. Rent caps, nationalisation, wealth taxes, investment taxes, political control of central banks, and even potential asset seizure. It sounds depressing, I know, but this is what's coming if we keep sticking our head in the sand. This is what de-equitisation will contribute towards. As we navigate through these depressing times, it's essential to remember the fundamental principles that underpin British capitalism. They are innovation, entrepreneurship, and wealth creation. And as we speak, they are all getting taken away from the next generation. By working together to address the root causes of the crisis, we can build a more stronger, resilient financial system. We can create a thriving stock market that not only benefits us in the city, but also members of the society as a whole. Without a prosperous society and their investment plans and bank deposits, we'll all be out of the job. This isn't just a financial problem. It is also a political and a social problem. If we don't act today, we won't have a stock market tomorrow. That's all for today's episode, and please do join us next time as we continue waffling about the ever-evolving landscape of finance and the economy. And until then, have a prosperous and a profitable time.